because this is a very precious knowledge, and I feel really very grateful that all of you are so receptive, because I always, because I don't, as I said on the first day, on Friday, I don't plan what I'm going to say, but what's coming out is really at the depth as what I can express, which means the receptivity is resonating at that deep level. So I really appreciate all of you for that, and I really hope that you continue with your meditation practice. We could have sat for a little longer, but we have 20 more minutes, so I thought to open it to some questions or some people to express something. And before we do that, can you see now with the how-to question, does today's talk answer that for you? How to, whatever was your question, how to have less fear and insecurity in my life, how to have less sense of expectations or acting upon other people's expectations of how I should behave. And many of these questions that were asked, can you see now? Basically, the answer is, know your true self. Know the nature of your true self is the answer. But see how if I had just said that to you at the beginning, it wouldn't have meant anything to you. So the answer, which is the antidote to the problem, what is the problem? Forgetfulness of your true self. What is the solution? Remembering your true, ever-complete, ever-present, indestructible self. Because if you're only, I am the personal self, ultimately, what is underlying the personal self is the fear of its end. Fear of death. This is underlying all our sense of problem. So how to remedy that? Know what is that in you, of you, not even in you, what is your true nature that is not destroyed when this body goes? What is that which is not affected from the waves of your mind? What is that which is ever complete, ever present? So this is the answer to any problem. Now we have to work with it though, because the mind is very convincing. It won't accept. And most of you sitting there, it can't be so easy. Can't be so easy. It is so easy. There's in the scriptures they say, when you have a itchy nose, the tendency of the mind is to want to scratch it like this. But actually it's just this. It's that easy. But we tend to do this. And then you can't quite reach. And then that's what the mind does. It can't be so easy. Can't be so easy just to know where suffering resides and where is the resolution of suffering. So it's a deep question, and therefore it's a deep answer. It needs some contemplation and it needs some meditation, because it's not enough just, the mind will not accept. You accept when you know who you truly are, how vast you are, how ever-present you are, how complete you are. So would anyone like to share anything from, we'll just spend the last 15 minutes a little bit sharing or asking. I had a nice meeting with Jeroen on Thursday. I was wondering if any questions came up for you. Well, not yet. Okay. If they come, will you feel free to ask? He's a very bright mind, so he had some brilliant questions. And he said, actually, in our meeting, we talked about the conditioned self, as we spoke yesterday. And he said, oh, therefore, it's not enough just to replace a negative thought with a positive thought. That's not enough. He could see that that was not deep enough. That was not going really to the depth of the problem, just replacing. Although, of course, it's nice to surround yourself with positivity, but that would also become a fixed state. I want the positive only. Then you're rejecting and grasping and rejecting and grasping. This is a great question. Okay, I can answer this very briefly, although we could spend a whole day on this question. Really, it's a fantastic question, and it's a real, true question. And so thank you for bringing that up. The human beings act atrociously with each other. The animal instinct in a human being is the animal instinct, to exploit someone else's body for their own gain. That's what an animal does. An animal eats another animal. So those human beings that are on the animal level, which means the predominance of the energy in them is of animal. Me against you. I either have to eat you or I will be eaten. I have to dominate you or I will feel dominated. That is the most base consciousness of a human being. It is the animal consciousness. It's the very lowest level. And it is a fact. It would be wonderful if everyone had risen above their animal nature. And many people do. Above the animal is the social, the human. And that's also a kind of level of duality or bondage, very much expressed by some people here too. I'm bound in my social expectation. It's also a kind of me and them. It's just a little more polite and it's more subtle. It's less aggressive, but it's equal pain. It's all pain too. The animal level is pain for the person who is dominating and obviously for the one who is dominated both. Because when one acts out of their animal nature, they are feeling completely dominated by the negativity of their own mind. And of course, the one who they're dominating. But it's similar in the social world also. We suffer a suffering of how I am seen by others. Then above that, on a more existential level, more subtle still, just suffering because one's own inner environment is not able to find purpose and meaning in one's life. I suffered when I was a teenager. I didn't even know why I was suffering. And that's really confusing. I had no object. I had no excuse. I had no cause. I just felt suddenly heavy and I couldn't find any meaningful purpose. That's a kind of existential suffering. That's also painful. We can make excuses why, because I have a pimple, or because I have, my body is, when you're a teenager, you're conscious of my body's too fat, too thin, too tall, too this, whatever. I knew these were not the reasons, or these were the kind of reasons offered to me in my peer groups. I'm liked, I'm not liked. But somewhere deep inside, these are not really the reasons. The mind grasps some reason, but what is that suffering which has no cause? So you're not only seeing suffering in racism, suffering in injustice, suffering in rape, suffering in exploitation, suffering in human trafficking, suffering in poverty. The whole human existence is suffering. So now, when we understand the state, doesn't it call you from within to get out of suffering? You have to get out of suffering. That's the only way, and I know it doesn't make sense to you now, how it is that if you take responsibility for your suffering, how that helps the world. But you cannot help anyone if you have not removed your own suffering. Easily said. If you have not lit your knowledge of your true self, you cannot be a light for anyone else, because the only answer to resolve suffering is to know your true nature is not of the animal, not of the social, and not of the personal. Your true nature is of the collective, eternal, indestructible, conscious self. When one can raise their level beyond all those other levels, they have reached the purpose of their incarnation. Reaching that purpose, you will be a light, even if it's for one other person. But naturally, if you are lit, you will be a light, even if it's for your own family, and even it will extend beyond that. You can only be responsible for your own light. Because if you are not lit, you are being complicit in the perpetuation of suffering. It's really hard to accept this, but it is really true. And if you can tell one person how to light their own awareness, that they are not dominated by their own negative thinking. This is what is the domination and exploitation of human beings. We have just learned a little bit how to control it and put on some kind of nice social mask. But if you are threatened enough and you are pushed to the end enough, you will be amazed how you can also act like an animal. It's there in all of us. All of it is there, because all is within the whole. But what are you going to identify with? Am I going to spend a lifetime identifying with suffering? With the imagination that I'm going to improve suffering? It doesn't make any sense. You yourself realize, where is that being? What is that awareness that is also you, although overlooked, although forgotten, that is not suffering? You build on that, you become convinced of that, and you help other people discover that same. Where is that point where there is no suffering? Is in the knowledge of that which is not bound in the animal, not bound in the human, not bound in the social, not bound in the personal. It is in the knowledge of your ever-present whole and complete self. I'm convinced of it now, and look, how many people, I'm traveling now this month, meeting probably 200 people. How many people will run with this light? Will probably be less than half. Who will really continue to meditate, continue to stay lit, continue to stay in touch. But even if it's half, it's 50 people, 100 people. And if they in turn can spread the knowledge of this, of the meditation and this precious knowledge of your own self to one person, so the only remedy for suffering is to remove suffering in yourself. I mean, I think even the teachings of Jesus said it. Remove the plank from your own eye, the wood from your own eye, before you try and take someone else's out. Because why he said the eye? Because there's a distortion of the waking state vision. The way you are seeing it is distorted by our own fears. You are contributing to fear if you keep seeing through the lens of fear. Remove the illusion, the misunderstanding of fear, your vision will be dramatically transformed, and it will be clear, and in that clarity you will know how to act. You will know when to speak and to whom to speak, and when to shut up and when to, and whose company not to keep. It will be very clear to you who could be receptive to this knowledge, who is not receptive to this knowledge. Be effective where you can be effective, rather than just feeling, oh my God, I do so much, what can I do, what can I do? Yeah, it's a really hopeless place to be, I get that. But be effective where you can be effective. And where you can be most effective is when you come from clarity, fearlessness, strength, and a fully matured, fully evolved consciousness to know that you see the whole picture. This will take some time for you to digest.
Awake this morning a bit confused.
Good.
And inside I felt, oh, I love my stories. I don't want to lose them.
Yes.
I don't know how to interact when I don't, when I won't be able to talk stories, because everything I'm talking about is a story.
Okay, you won't lose your stories. They will remain. I've told you about myself. They remain. You just don't remain fixed to your story.
I just recognize it's not the truth, but a story.
Yeah. That's it. That's it.
Got it. Easy.
Easy. That's it. There's no truth in the story. The story is in the truth. Because the truth, well, hold on one second. The truth is everything. But where have we made this truth and that not truth? That's the struggle.
So I stay in all these different layers you
Yeah.
talked about.
Yes.
Just,
all those layers are within you.
in our life on earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
the main cause or purpose is to just,
To know your full,
and
complete
if
self.
I feel suffer, so to know, okay, this is part of the layers. So
Okay, so you're suffering. Of course, if I cut my hand, I'm going to have that suffering. If I say words not meaning to, if I say words that hurt someone, I'm going to suffer. I'm going to feel that. But the suffering we're talking of that will be removed is the suffering which is born of complete confusion. What is the purpose and who am I? That's the kind of suffering, existential suffering you can call it, but it's the deepest suffering, is the suffering that will be completely removed. That there is no confusion as to who I am and thereby what is the purpose of my life. That suffering can be removed. But the other suffering, yes, of course, if I have a headache, I have a headache, I'm going to suffer. If I say something mean to someone, I'm going to suffer. If someone says something to me, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to not like it, but it won't confuse me as to who I am.
I won't put a question
Yeah.
on who I am.
Yeah, it won't cause a doubt, a deeper doubt in me as to who I am. Because that's the real suffering, the forgetfulness of who you are. Yeah, good. Wonderful. Excellent. See, it's good when you wake up in the morning confused, because then it gives opportunity for clarity. Come. Oh, yes. Great. Good question, because they weren't here yesterday. Who would like to answer that? What are we talking about when we say the story?
I didn't understand his
What is
question.
what is the story, he asks.
Okay. Every time when we are not in the moment, when we go back to the past and we look forward to the future, because the past has gone,
Yeah.
the future is not there.
Right.
Only what's there
Is
what we
presence.
in the moment.
So basically the story is what the mind is constantly describing to yourself. It's describing things, it's describing past, it's describing future, it's describing the dynamics of social interaction, it's describing your abilities, it's describing your preferences, describing. We could go on for an hour because this is the nature of the waking state. The waking state is a kind of story. It constantly is describing, or you can say narrating. You know the word narrating? There's a commentary, right? Everyone knows that commentary? The thing that you can't switch off, the thing that bothers you, that's the story. That's narrating a constant story, and that the basis of that story is I am what I see. I am what I think. I am what I have been told to think. You could say the conditioned personal self is the story. Excellent.
But not only the thinking, also the emotions.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, all of it. The emotions, basically the body, so it's described in the Vedic tradition, they're all described as bodies. Physical body, energetic body, emotional body, mental body, ego body. It's all describing the personal self. And that only exists in the waking state consciousness. So thereby, it is of change. It is of appearance and disappearance. It is not of completeness, of ever-presence, as she was saying. Great. Doris.
Can meditation help you to understand what you can change in the awakened state? What is to understand what is, because I understand some things you cannot change, you have just learned to accept that it's floating, good and bad, and tension and so, but there may be things that will be good in your life if you start
Yes,
to change. And
absolutely.
meditation help you
Absolutely.
be more clear,
Yes, but
reflect in the other side from this.
yes, excellent question. It's very right. When you are meditating and you are inviting more and more depth into knowing your true and complete self, those habits which are unhelpful for you that you want to change will change more easily, because where the habits have come from is a sense that you are incomplete. If you try and change a habit of thinking, a negative habit, without the knowledge of your true self, it's going to be through discipline, through force, which works for some people, works temporarily for others, and completely doesn't work for some. If you really want true change of those bad habits or harmful thoughts, patterns, first know yourself. Through the meditation, it's the only real way, because intellect can only go so far. Through meditation goes beyond the intellect and really starts to perceive this more expanded, more subtle sense of self. Then you look at your habit patterns and your more destructive patterns in your life, and you can work to modify them. What you are changing is to support you, not to support your identity. If you're trying to just change your personal identity so it looks okay from the outside, you'll feel frustrated. It's got to be a deep change in yourself, for yourself. I know it seems very selfish, this direction of thinking, the tradition. But it's in recognition of the unified self. It's actually the least selfish. It is the recognition of our true self. One more before we stop. I like these questions.